Welcome to the Unwashed Asses, episode 98, recorded for the third time on Sunday. Not Sunday, but Friday. I don't know why I keep thinking it's Sunday. Friday, March 29th, 2019. This is the last time I'm going to be talking to you guys today. I'm definitely in the upswing, the uptick, the high of bipolarity or manic depression, and trying to embrace this crack cocaine-like feeling in my head of do all the work, do all the things, be productive, go, go, go. So, I've done quite a bit today. It's time to, settle that on down, ease it back down before I burn myself out. But it's important to capitalize on these moments and take advantage of it because, there's other weeks where I want to do nothing but, mouth sex a shotgun and lay in bed and do nothing and just generally put myself down. So yeah, days like today, they're good days. Make me feel good, make me feel alive. But we're not here to talk about me. We're here to review yet another movie in this catch-up series. This time we go all the way back to 1936 with Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times. I feel like I'm channeling a bit of Casey Kasem right now, giving you the top 40. So, Modern Times was written and directed by Charlie Chaplin, and it was his last appearance as the little tramp character. And I guess you'd call it his first talkie. The idea behind it is the little tramp finds him in a world of modernization, feeling like a cog in a machine and losing himself and searching for a sense of self-identification and, potentially love. The movie itself surprisingly feels like it applies to, quote-unquote, our modern times because of how it portrays the average worker. Now, when it initially came out, it was putting itself in the period of the Great Depression. References this several times with factories closing up, people looking for work, people going hungry. And when there is work, it is very much not in favor of the worker, but rather the owner. I don't know. I mean, working for a corporation, I'd like to feel that I can relate a bit and feeling like, oh no, I'm just a number. I don't really contribute to anything in the grand scheme of things, and I don't really matter, and I'm just meant to be used and abused by the company. You don't really get that sense unless you're in a smaller local mom and pop type of company or something with less than 50 employees. I found in my personal experience. So I could definitely relate with those themes, especially when we have like the first third of the movie taking place in the machining factory where Chaplin's job is just to put nuts onto plates, and we have the owner of the company just working on a jigsaw puzzle, occasionally Skyping messages to his head foreman, and that's just mostly to increase production. It's never to slow things down, but rather increase production. Or in the other time that he talks to Chaplin, who's been on literally a 30-second break, he Skypes him in the bathroom like, hey, get back to work. What are you doing? And this was shocking in the accuracy of how things like that would be portrayed, where, the way it was implemented was a bit silly because he's got a big old box full of knobs and switches, and he's using that to flip between a rudimentary CCTV system, and there's a Jacob's ladder, Tesla coil thing sitting in the corner. But the idea is there that, I've had employers do just this, where they will, leave Skype on auto pickup, shoot over a call, and it's automatically picked up on your end, and before you know it, you have the face of Oz beaming down at you and giving you orders. So it was interesting to see this implemented, decades ago, nearly, 90 years ago. It was something being thought of. But much like people, in those situations, Chaplin's character suffers a not necessarily a psychotic breakdown, but a nervous breakdown. He's overworked, and we see this in bits where when it is time to go on break or time to switch out with another employee, his hands are still stuck in the comical, like nut fastening motions that he's doing while on the assembly line, and it's hard for him to take a break. And it's all portrayed just impeccably. I've not seen a Chaplin film in its entirety until this, and I was just blown away by his comedic timing and pantomime and his ability to command the scene without being overbearing at the same time. I never felt like he overshadowed his characters, but the co-stars, but rather they worked in a way to not only uplift him, but to move the slapstick along and keep things moving, and it really worked to great effect. I was kind of astounded by how well it worked out. And that's the bulk of the movie itself, is that it's just essentially each action of moving the story forward also just serves to set up another scene of slapstick. And it's enthralling, it's engaging until you start getting to the point like, okay, well, I've now figured it out. All you're doing is setting up in your next slapstick bit to use the little tramp character. We have the other character, Ellen, played by Paulette Goddard, who does get some screen time of her own in a B story before she gets merged into Chaplin's story. But it's not as effective, and I don't know if it's just because of the way the character was written or if it was her own ability. But she still seemed expressive enough, both in the scenes on her own and in working with Chaplin. It was clear that there's a very obvious chemistry between the two, and it worked because it was designed to be a love story, and they ended up getting married in real life. So it worked well for them. They played off one another well. But the movie itself does feel like it gets long in the tooth when it's just slapstick scene after slapstick scene. There's no... It doesn't feel like there's a substantial story progression. Yes, the story moves along, but again, it's mostly to serve the purpose of getting Chaplin into a different setting where a different gag can be played out. And the problem with that is, one, it's repetitive, but two, the gags themselves tend to get longer and longer the further into the movie you get. And while the movie itself only has a runtime of 87 minutes, it feels much longer than that because of that choice. I felt that many of the gimmicks could have been trimmed down and save runtime and still been just as effective. Case in point would be the automatic feeding machine. So while Chaplin's working in the factory, I guess you call him a door-to-door salesman, comes to the CEO and is like, hey, I have this machine that will save you time and money. It essentially just attaches to your workers while they're on the assembly line, automatically feeds them, and allows them to keep working through a lunch break, which, is comical to think of, that companies don't really value their employees. They want them to be just as effective as they possibly can. And what better way to do that than to take away lunch breaks and feed them while they're still working? So, of course, they go and test it on Chaplin's character of the little tramp, and several minutes of slapstick ensues. And excuse me, while it is funny to see Chaplin being force-fed food, the machine, of course, is going to malfunction. Excuse me, sorry. And this is where the gag starts to fall apart, because rather than just let it malfunction and then call it then and there, they decide to try and repair the machine several times over with no real effect. And it just ran on for far too long. Another scene, to highlight it would be when Chaplin is the night security guard and is roller skating next to a giant pit, or essentially an open balcony that's under construction, and would lead him to plummet 4 stories down. It's loop after loop of him doing the same skating maneuver and nearly falling into said pit. Once you realize what's going on, it's very boring to watch. Yes, he's very artful and it's very masterful the way he's doing it, but when he's not really adding anything new, it does tend to fall apart. I was, I guess, impressed at the progressiveness of the film. It apparently came about when Chaplin had a conversation with Mahatma Gandhi while touring Europe and promoting city lights. And he clearly based it on the Great Depression. But the movie itself touches on several subjects which, while they were happening at the time, were very... not necessarily taboo, but it's like, oh wow, you have balls for attacking something like this head on. Not only do we have the Great Depression, we have modernization, we have communism, where Chaplin's character, I thought it was being set up as a union rally. I guess you could kind of call it the same, because communism did try to spread about through unionization of workers. The use of cocaine, and I'm trying to think of another one. If I think of it, I'll let you know. But those were gigantic to me. Like, oh wow, we're tackling subject matter that, especially for 1936, would have been shocking. And I guess it was also seen that way because there was a production code in films that came about in 1930 that forbid the depiction of illegal drug use in films. I'm not seeing anything related to fines or what happened to Chaplin because of it, but I guess reading this, he did make other drug references in another short film, Easy Street, back in 1917. Now, the film is predominantly a silent film, but there are bits of talking, and to my recollection, the only character that actually does speak is the CEO of the company while he's relaying those essentially Skype commands to the foreman or to Chaplin. It's interesting in how it's portrayed. Now, the decision for it to be a silent film was Chaplin's, and apparently he had originally written it to be a talkie, but he found that in using the sound, it diminished the appeal and attraction of his little tramp character. In addition to that, he was also afraid that since he played very well to international audiences, if his character ended up speaking English, then the audiences there would fail to identify or relate to him or be able to understand what's going on in the film. And I can understand his reasoning for that. So as such, this was the last appearance of the little tramp character. It was retired with quite literally a walk into the sunset. And I don't know, I'm going to have to go back and watch his other films, but I felt it made only too much sense. If you have a character that's predominantly been in silent films and has never spoken, why would you start introducing that into it's like making Mario, all of a sudden a great orator. It doesn't make sense. He only has a few catchphrases, doesn't really talk. I guess a similar concept, except for one of the final scenes where Chaplin is working as a server and entertainer in a bar where Ellen has gotten him a job. And he does do a song, but it's done in gibberish. So there were bits of French and Italian thrown in, but it's predominantly gibberish. So his character, he still kind of keeps in line with character. But this was one of the parts of the movie, aside from the slapstick gags running on too long, where it fell apart for me. you get a sense of the story he's trying to tell through the pantomime and through the gibberish. And it is a good performance, but I don't know if it didn't play well in this time, or if there's some joke that I'm missing that would have been more prominent back in the time of its initial release. But it kind of fell apart for me. I will say, though, that I was surprised by the quality of the film. It was shot in the 18 frames per second, which was standard for silent films, but it was ramped up to the normal talkie speed of 24 frames per second, which is what we have in modern films today. But it gave the action a frenetic pace, frenetic. It made it feel more energetic, because I'm probably mispronouncing that word. But it did work well for the slapstick, but it gave it the quality of early films where they didn't really have a timing to the camera itself. It was just really how fast the camera operator cranked the handle. While it is standardized, again, it feels a bit rushed when we're going through gag after gag after gag. But a lot of it is saved by the acting themselves and the actors themselves. And I do want to comment that I was floored at the performance by Paulette Goddard. She was just breathtaking. I mean, she was a gorgeous woman, but the way that she could hold her own in scenes with Chaplin, who was, again, just eating up the scenery in every scene he was with, but the way the two of them played off one another, and the way she essentially could act independently and set up things and also do a bit of a payoff on her own, like when she takes him back to the shack that she's, I assume, erected as a new home for them, and is kind of giving him the tour. And yes, he's doing the slapstick things of, getting hit in the head by a board and falling through the floor, but the way she kind of dotes and cares after him, or is looking after him while commanding the scene and kind of setting up thing after thing, or another common theme is Chaplin constantly going to jail for other reasons, which again kind of grew long in the tooth and wore on me. But after the two are acquainted, Goddard's character is constantly waiting for him outside the jail with nothing but enthusiasm, and the way she directs him as far as, this is what we're going to go do, here's what I have set up, you need a job here, let's go get this taken care of. And I don't know, just the costuming for her, I was very stunned. But I guess anything's going to look good when you compare it to Chaplin's tramp character, who just looks like that, a tramp with his oversized shoes and big balloon pants. I don't know, I guess that's not hard to look good when you're compared against that. The movie itself, again, I was glad it ended when it did, because I wished it was ending sooner. But as I was doing research for this, it turned up a whole hell of a lot on Chaplin that I didn't expect to really read. Almost enough for me to do an entirely different show. But it definitely, I keep saying definitely, it changed my opinion or my preconceived notions about the man. Don't get me wrong, he's a phenomenal actor, but there's quite a bit to him personally that I had not anticipated. So I'm going to do some more research, and we'll do an episode on him entirely. But this one was hard to find, even to rent. Now, a lot of the movies that we've been trying to watch haven't been available on streaming services, again, like quote-unquote free. But every one of them we've been able to get through Vudu, except for this one. I don't know if it's some sort of exclusivity deal, but we were able to find it on Amazon and rent it there. As far as whether or not you need to watch it, I don't know. Again, it's quirky, it's unique, and it definitely gives you a good frame of reference as far as where movies were and where they were going. It's kind of like reading Lovecraft, where you can see the influences in other media and the impact that Chaplin had. But whether or not you need to see it, I don't know. There might be other films of his that are more iconic, but I don't know at this time. And with the exclusivity, you need to get it through Amazon. I don't know. It's good. It's definitely, it stands on its own, and there are very memorable scenes in it. Like, this movie will stick with me, and it won't be hard to recall what happened and why it happened. But as far as need to watch, I can't say at this time. It was enjoyable, though. So if you got an hour and a half to kill and you want some classic old-timey movie stuffs, it's definitely worth a go. But I don't know that it deserves all the praise that it has. But I could be entirely wrong, and this could be Chaplin's greatest thing since, City Lights. So that's going to wrap it up. Tentative plan is 2 more shows tomorrow, and then 1 for Sunday, and of course Monday we'll start getting back on our normal schedule. But otherwise, if you have any comments, concerns, criticisms, critiques, complaints, or otherwise just want to chat about modern times, drop an email over at theunwashedasses@gmail.com. Again, theunwashedasses@gmail.com. And of course, this year, help the show grow. Tell a friend. Let somebody know they can get TUA wherever they get their podcast normally. Delightful little 15 minutes plus that's good on the way to work, good on the way from work, working out, anything involving work if you're an assembly line production assistant. Otherwise, if you want to go above and beyond, head over to patreon.com/zeroand09, ZEROAND09. Pitch in $1 or $2 a month. That keeps things going here. But that's going to do it. We'll talk to you tomorrow.